Sunday.
It's Sunday morning.
I love mornings.
The games are over, and we're breaking it all down. This is your Morning After podcast, with all the insight and analysis on the Utes, Cougars, and Aggies. The Morning After podcast with Hans, Scotty, and Lloyd Cole begins right now.
And he gave us an opportunity to come in here and show what we're made of.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Why I'm easy. I'm easy like Sunday morning.
All right, welcome in. Week one is in the books. It is your Morning After podcast. Scott Gerard, Hans Olsen, Lloyd Cole. We got a lot to break down. Happy Sunday. Happy week one. Gentlemen, let's go through this, and we got a lot to discuss. Utah gets the win. We spent a lot of time on Friday breaking that down, but BYU and Jake Retzlaff get the W. Utah State struggles a little bit out of the gate, but they end up pulling away and getting the win as well. But Hans, let's start with BYU. You had kind of felt like Retzlaff was going to be the guy, and that indeed was the case as BYU gets the win. I have not had a chance to go back and spend a lot of time breaking down that game. I'll do it throughout the day today and make sure we're ready to go on Monday. But give me your bird's eye view on what you saw yesterday.
Well, I have to say we start with the technology that we've got, Scotty. How crystal clear does this sound for our podcasting?
Oh, man.
How sweet is this?
It used to be, a few years ago when we started this thing, it was with tin cans and string, and now it just keeps getting better and better.
Well,
that's exciting, man.
That's because it's all brought to you by nobody.
By us.
Yeah, by Hans and Scotty.
Yep.
It's great to be back together, and it's fun to get this podcast going again. The Morning After podcast has been a wild failure, but we'll just keep doing it for the 4 people that download it on every Sunday, and we appreciate those 4 people that download and listen to us
Mom.
at church. Please check in with us.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks. Check in with us at 975 Hans, at Scotty G Zone, at Lloyd Cole. Is it Lloyd Cole Zone?
Lloyd Cole Zone, almost like Lloyd Calzone, but Lloyd Cole Zone.
Almost like Lloyd Calzone. So you can check in with us on Twitter. Let us know that you're listening to the Morning After podcast, because it's really the only gratification we get out of this, because there's no money involved. Oh, and if you want to sponsor it, let us know, because we'll take sponsor dollars on it.
And do us a favor, tell a friend, and get people in your downline, and let's build this pyramid. Come on.
Yeah, go rate it. Get it loaded down on iTunes and all those other things. But Scotty, it was everything that I could have hoped for BYU in their opener against Southern Illinois. I saw a lot of things I liked, and not very many things I didn't like. So we'll just start with the quarterback competition. You and I had speculated throughout the last month or so that Jake Retzlaff would be the starting quarterback, just based off of Gary Bohannon would have probably got the parade and the big announcement, the big release, but they played it really close to the vest, and Jake Retzlaff gets announced as the starter. And he comes out and he plays starter quality. He goes 20 of 30 for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And he ends up over a 190 rating, and he ends up at a 67.7 QBR, and he ends up leading this team to a very convincing victory. And what was nice, right out of the gates, first drive, first quarter, scores. Right out of the gates, first drive, second half, scores. And he spread it out to 10 different receivers, and we saw really 3 primary different rushers, and we got to see young talent, so a lot of new talent, which was awesome. It just was one of those games where you got pretty much everything you needed, everything you wanted.
Well, I think and Lloyd, I want to get your perspective on this as well. BYU, you just want to take care of business, and you want to get out of a game without injury. You want to get out of a game with a little bit of fine-tuning going on, and BYU was able to do that. But looking at Retzlaff and 20 of 30, 348, as you mentioned, with the 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and you had equal carries between Rapati and Martin, each with 13 carries. Martin with 67 yards and a score, Rapati with 57 yards and a score, and look, there were a lot of hungry mouths to feed yesterday for BYU, but ultimately everybody got a little piece of the action, got it done, and that's a hell of a day at the office for BYU.
Absolutely, and Jake Retzlaff, I think I only saw like one that missed where I was like, oh, that was you missed that guy, and it was a guy that was early in the game where he had a guy wide open towards the right side of the end zone, and I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about, Hans. And he overthrew him, and the guy was wide open. But that was like, that happens. But he looked good. He looked solid, and this is exactly, we talked about it with Utah and SUU. You don't want to read too much into it, but they did exactly what they were supposed to do, and that was take care of business. And who looked amazing? It was Chase freaking Roberts. Chase Roberts, had 108 yards receiving. He was unbelievable. I was surprised he didn't have a touchdown, but that guy is going to have a big season for. And I heard him in the post game. And, I would imagine he's going to have more than just one 100-yard game, one 100-yard game, Hands.
Well, there's so many receivers now, and it's tough for defenses to figure this thing out. You got JoJo Phillips, who's a nice speedster, and Keelan Marion, and they didn't even have Darius Lassiter, who's going to be their number 2 receiver behind Chase Roberts. So he could be their number 1 receiver because he's had such a great camp. But, guys, this was a position that was making mistakes and didn't look fluid. Yeah. And remember that? Like the early starts of last season, they were out of position and getting penalties and not picking up blocks. And Fesi Sataki had this wide receiving crew dialed in. I could tell that they had some really rough conversations coming out of last season. And Fesi's no joke. Fesi is a lot of fun. And he can be one of the most laid-back, funny. Scotty, you know him.
Oh, yeah.
I know you've met him. Like, he is just hilarious. But he is a Sataki. And when there's business that's needed, he will drive his heels in the ground and he will stop playing, and it gets serious real fast. And you could see that these receivers have worked their butts off, and they looked good. Parker Kingston, you talk about the 10 receiving options that got hit last night across the board. Tabatase, who I thought looked really good in moments. My favorite throw of the night was a play-action look to a seam post route. Tabatase right down the middle of the field, and Jake Retzlaff put this hammered throw down on him, and he came down for the touchdown. It was awesome. You saw a reception from the freshman, Cody Hagan. Remember, we've talked about Cody Hagan all through camp, guys, and he jumped on the field and looked good. Tay Nakua was on the field too. He got some reps, and Tay looked good. He did hit Cody Epps. Cody Epps, he was the one guy that's like, I'd like to see more. I want to see more from Cody Epps. Actually, there's 2. I want to see more from Cody Epps and Keanu Hill.
Yeah.
And I know that those are 2 names that have grabbed a lot of headlines and a lot of pub, but Cody Epps hasn't been the same, Scotty, since he jumped into the portal. And Keanu Hill, I wanted to see more from him as that receiving tight end option. You got to see the better connection between him and Retzlaff.
Let's there's no doubt about that too. And we had heard a lot of hype. I mean, we went back and forth on Keanu Hill on the top 60 and 60 like crazy. That was probably one of our biggest discussion points as to whether to even include him on the list of 60. And we had a lot of feedback from saying that, hey, now that he's made that switch, he's going to be really good, and this guy's going to be a big part of the offense. Well, he had 1 catch for 7 yards yesterday. And, I don't know, if there were a lot of other targets or what the situation was, but that's not what you want to see right out of the gate there.
Is that just too many mouths, Hans?
It is a lot of mouths, but they did try to feed him, though, Lloyd. They targeted him, I think, 4 times, and One of the targets, he didn't realize the ball would swing out to him. He was blocking to the outside and never turned his head, and Retzlaff tried to drop it out to him, and then they were running a hard nickel press on him. So every time I saw him in the route, he was pressed out. There was somebody that was running into his chest, but they still tried to target him. There were probably, I think that there were 2, maybe 3 misses on his targets, and then he came up with the 1 reception. And so I know that they're going to try to go to him, and it needs to happen. He's got to be a receiving threat. Or take him off the field and find one of these tight ends that is going to be the true receiving option. Now, Tavatase, that was really his second catch as a tight end, and it looked good. He looks more lean and more ready for route play, but I think that Keanu Hill, they were trying to feed him.
Let's switch gears and go to the defensive side of the ball. How did you feel like they stood up? I'm looking at, again, the stat line, and I'll take a closer look at this game later today in preparation for the show, but you got DJ Williams, who had 98 yards passing, but also 121 yards on the ground. So he had a quarterback who, had 200 yards of total offense, with the majority of that coming through the ground and a couple of touchdowns. But overall, what did you see from BYU defensively?
I loved it. And we got to remember Jay Hill was out. Your defensive coordinator's out. And Kalani Sitake, he took over play calling duties. We had a great conversation with Kalani after the game in our post game, and he was cracking me up, man. We were laughing so hard. I asked him what it was like, and he said, I had a cram session. He goes, I knew sometime Thursday evening, and I started cramming on my play calling. He said, I haven't done it for a while, and then he said, if there was something that went wrong, I was texting Jay, and Jay was calling the plays from text. If something went right, I was calling it, and it worked well. We were just laughing our butts off, and the reason we were able to laugh and have a good time is that Jay's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because there were times, Scotty and Lloyd, as you guys know, there were times where maybe there's some questions there on what's going on with Jay's heart and how bad is this. But I think everybody feels a weight lifted off their shoulders that he's going to be okay. And you guys know that this hit hard for me because on the same day Jay Hill had a heart attack, my best high school friend had a heart attack and passed away. He was gone. He didn't make it through the heart attack. The same day, my best friend from high school is gone. And then Jay has the heart attack. And so this whole weight falls on you, and it fell on Kalani. Kalani managed it well, and he called the plays. And I thought the defense answered the call. And, Scotty, tell me if you can't envision this, because I told Kalani this in the postgame. And Lloyd, I know that you know Jay Hill too, but I said, Kalani, I know what the first thing Jay's going to do. He's going to lean his head back, and he's going to take a casual jab of, why'd that quarterback have 120 rushing yards on you, Kalani? He's gonna jab him. And Kalani's going to be like, hey, where were you?
Yeah.
Those two are so fun. They are just so fun. And Jay's going to have a point. That quarterback was all over the place. But a lot of that was scrambling duty, Scotty. So if you take quarterback rushing away, there was a net 2 yards from non-quarterback rushing.
Ooh.
Net 2 yards. Yep, they could not run the ball. And this was 5 seniors up front for the Salukis. These guys were tenured. They are very good offensive linemen. And BYU shut them down. But a couple of guys that impressed me, Jack Kelly. He had a missed tackle down in the red zone, down near the end zone, that he should have sealed up. Outside of that, I thought he did great. He did have a sack that was lined up, but it was crazy.
Was that QB run?
Yes, off the right side.
Touchdown? Yep.
He did. Yep. He did have a sack that he had in his sights, and he came through off a beautiful blitz, and he missed the sack. But the crazy thing is, he jammed his foot in the ground and made this crazy turn on a dime and came back to the line of scrimmage and made the tackle on Williams for like a half-yard gain and just barely missed the sack. The other guy that impressed me, Sione Moa. It was so good to see Sione, guys.
Yeah.
How long have we been waiting for Sione Moa? And he played the majority of the game at that MAC linebacker. And he had so many great feels and so many great moments. And then it was great to see his brother Ice Moa. Ice had back-to-back pressure from that Rover blitz. Well, not even from the blitz, just Rover recognition. And he had back-to-back pressures, and he had a couple of fantastic tackles. So fun to see those Moa boys in the second line of defense. Ice Moa moved from defensive end to linebacker, and he killed it. So I was excited to see that. We did see for Masiata. We saw the freshman, guys.
Yeah.
They put him out there. They hyped and talked about Ephraim Masiata, and he does look small. He looks really small. He is very explosive. His explosions got him into just a little bit of trouble because he was exploding wide, and that was giving Williams some running room. So he's got to get more disciplined in just coming down his lane and keeping his lane. But I understand what he's doing. He's a pass rush artist. So he's trying to create some of that separation to work into his pass rush off the outside. But he looks explosive. He does look undersized. Looks explosive. He's got to put on some weight. But I was happy to see him. There were a lot of good things, Scotty. Logan Latui, who got the start at the defensive end, he looks solid. And then Isaiah Banya, he got a sack. John Nelson got a sack. Isaiah Banya matched his entire sack total from last season in the first 2 quarters of the 2024 season. And then Big John Nelson got himself a sack off of a bull pressure. And there were 7 TFLs. And I know it's Southern Illinois, but, yeah, I was excited. I saw it. And the corners played well. They stomped down on the receivers. They played a ton of press. Press all night. Not all night, but press a lot of the night.
Well, I think that certainly when you play a team, and this goes across the board too, with Utah State, Utah, and BYU all playing FCS teams, that's going to change in a big way coming up next week. BYU hits the road hands. You're going to be in Dallas as BYU hit the road to SMU. SMU got a win. Obviously, they had the come from behind victory against Nevada in week 0. Then they played Houston Christian Sisters of the Poor somebody yesterday and won that one 59-7, which they should. And so they've got 2 games under their belt, and BYU's got to go down there. We'll find out really quickly if BYU really is improved or not when they take on that SMU team. Again, Southern Illinois can playing a team like that, you should look good. But I do think there's a lot of things you can take away from that game and feel really good about. It's okay for you to be a BYU fan puffing out your chest at church today and being like, all right, you know what? I think there's a lot of good things. But all that being said, you're going to find out real quickly how improved you are next week as they take on SMU.
I am so excited to have college football back, Scotty. How good did it feel?
Yeah.
How good did it feel to be back up in the booth?
Oh, man. Everything just felt right in the world. I was yelling at Ajay. Kevin White was doing his thing. Oh, I got it. I mean,
all is well. I'm yelling at Ajay.
We'll talk about this off the air. I had a big
we need to
blow.
make that part of we need to have that part of the morning after podcast. Stories of Ajay.
Oh, jeez.
Like it's got to be every weekend.
Oh man, I want to tell a story so bad, but I probably shouldn't.
Hey, did you get my my text on the line, the play-by-play line? I don't even know if you were able to even get it in. Okay.
I didn't.
All right, it's fine.
I got mine in, Lloyd.
It's all good. I did. I heard it, and I'm dang proud of you because it sounded awesome. I was there. I was in studio, and I heard it, and it was really good. So Well done. That's okay. You know what? We're going to have 2 for you next week, Hans.
Well,
we kind of forgot about it. We'll have 2 for you next week.
I screwed up. We should have gotten that in during the week. Look, you know what? It's early season jitters. Like, we'll get into our groove, and we forgot to do the phrase that pays, but we'll get it in, and we'll go and have some fun with it. And I texted Lloyd before the game. I'm like, hey, we forgot to do it. You got a phrase for me? And Lloyd came through for me, and I worked it in on a Bryson Barnes run. So, all right, let's.
Hey, really quick before you move on, Scotty, I did want to mention this with SMU only because I saw part of it, and you're right. It was like Houston Christian Sisters of the Poor, but they nearly got 400 yards rushing, and Kevin Jennings really played the majority of the game, but SMU nearly had 400 yards rushing, and not that they'll do that against BYU, but I'm just saying, BYU, here it comes. As Scotty mentioned, you've got a massive test. It's going to be a Friday game. Oh, man, you're going to find out. We're going to know what this team is. And by the way, Wyoming looked terrible.
Yeah, awful.
So things are – this SMU game is interesting, but there's some potential bright spots here in the first 3 games for BYU.
So BYU takes on SMU. I had the game in Logan yesterday. Utah State just did not look good right out of the gate. The Aggies, Spencer Petras throws interceptions on his first 2 drives. The first one, not his fault. It was a 3rd down, and there was a slant that was open, and Jalen Royals just slipped on the cut and fell down, and it was a timing route, and Petras already had the ball in the air when he fell down, and it landed right in the hands of a defender. The second interception, a little bit more on him, and Utah State just can't seem to get it going, and they're down at the half hands, 14-10, to a Robert Morris team that came in and look, they were not about to be intimidated, and they were playing a little bit of bully ball. And then, and midway through the second quarter, Petras leaves the game with an injury. It looked like a cramp at first, and thinking, okay, he'll be out for a few plays. And as he walked over to the sideline after getting up, and he still can't put much weight on his leg, and you're thinking, well, that looks a little worse than a cramp. And then he goes to the locker room, and he never comes out. And I'm not exactly sure. Just the way that he was walking and the way that he kind of handled himself, it kind of looked like one of those high ankle sprains. And that's just me being around the game and watching other guys deal with injuries. That's not anything official from Utah State, but that's kind of the way it looked. And the vibe I got in talking to players and coaches afterwards that Bryson Barnes is probably going to be your guy next week against USC. And Barnes came in, looked really shaky in the second quarter, but then Utah State got into halftime, and he came out in the second half and just played really well. And you've been saying all along, you think Bryson Barnes can be a really good Mountain West quarterback? Well, with that talent that he's got around him at Utah State and the way that they like to sling it, he played much more confidently in the second half. And Utah State ends up outscoring Robert Morris 26-0 in the second half. End up winning that game 36-14, and defensively just really shutting down Robert Morris in the second half.
I'm watching so last night I could not sleep. I got home like 1:45 in the morning because we went and ate those swachos, Scotty.
Attaboy.
Lloyd, it got
So you fell off the wagon. Okay. Good for you. It's football season, man. It's football season. I'm not going to judge.
Not only did I fall off the wagon rolled right over my head last night. It was, it got really loose and crazy. But anyways, I could not get to sleep. I got home about 1:40, could not get to sleep, so I pulled up the Utah State highlights, and that is one of the most incredible interceptions I've ever seen in my life by that Rob Carter. I have never seen anything. Yep. I haven't seen a reception like that. It made Odell Beckham look like just a typical catch. That was crazy.
I know. I lost my mind, too, on the broadcast. I know that I'm supposed to be like pro
As
Utah.
you should have. I know.
I know I'm supposed to be all pro Utah State, but I saw that. I was just like, oh, my hell.
For people that didn't see this guy, the ball's overthrown. And you're thinking it's going to sky over both the receiver and his head. And this dude, as he's running straight forward, leaps and turns almost a 180 while he's in the air. One hands this ball as he's still turning and turns a full 360, going back the way his momentum was taking him with the ball in one hand, never touched the other. It was so wild. And there's no way that should have been a pick.
But it better have been Sports Center top 10. It should have been number one.
Oh, yeah.
I think it should have been number one.
Yeah. No,
hard to believe.
Incredible. And that was right before halftime, too. And it was just like, so Utah State was up 10-7, and, they couldn't get anything going offensively. They have to punt. Robert Morris goes down, scores a touchdown with like 40 seconds left. And you're thinking, okay, so you're down 14-10. Maybe you can get a field goal. And Barnes gets him to about the 50-yard line, throws that interception. And so here you got Robert Morris with the touchdown and that crazy interception going into halftime. And for the first time in the game, I'm thinking, this could be bad. Because, there's always those slow starts in games like that. And and deep down, you're like, okay, it'll be fine. Everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. And that was the one time where I'm like, oh no, this might be bad, and but obviously it was not. But that interception was just unbelievable.
I want to calm everybody down though, because I'm sure Aggie fans up that first half, as you mentioned, giving up 14 points to Robert Morris. I just want to calm everybody down with the Bryson Barnes situation, because Barnes gives you nearly 100 yards on the ground last night, a touchdown, and he gives you nearly 200 yards through the air and 2 touchdowns. So take away that crazy interception and give Bryson a full week of number one reps and game preparation. I actually think the playbook opens up a lot, because you can run some different options, and he can make the throws. You just got to tell him, hey, Bryson, we're not turning this ball over ever again, not one time. For the rest of your life, we're not turning the ball over ever. And I know that was a random turnover, but I have a lot of confidence in Bryson Barnes. You mentioned it, but Utah State fans, just give him a minute. Now, USC and Utah, you're just going to have to fight through these next 2 weeks. We get to see USC today, 5:30 kick against LSU, which I always love that big highlighted Sunday game before the NFL kicks off. So USC LSU tonight, 5:30. I think it's that ABC game, isn't it, Scotty?
I believe so. I'm not sure, but I think so, yeah.
Okay, so ABC tonight. So you get to see their next opponent. But and by the way, Bryson has beat USC.
Oh, yeah, in the Coliseum.
I do want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
In the Coliseum, Bryson's got to win against USC. So he's not going to be intimidated going in there.
No.
He's been there. He won that game. He walked out a winner. So
less than 12 months ago. Yeah, for sure.
Uh-huh. So I just want Utah State fans to just calm down with that. What I'm worried about is the Briggs situation. Did he leave the game?
Yeah, Robert Briggs, and it was really sad, too. I mean, it was in the fourth quarter, game's out of hand. Not completely out of hand, but pretty much out of hand. And he rips off this beautiful 55-yard run, tiptoeing down the sideline, and a guy comes, pushes him out of bounds, and then and it's not the guy's fault, but he kind of flips around and then kind of whips him from behind, and it hits the bottom part of his leg. Either a fractured leg or an ankle. I'm not exactly sure, but it was a broken bone of some part. And they immediately go over there, and then the trainer, Mike Williams, who's really great at his job, I mean, he has that air cast out immediately, and they have the cart out there immediately. And, look, Robert Briggs' season's done. It's not official yet, but you're not coming back from that and this season, and that's a big blow. They do have a freshman they really like that will get some time. His name's Herschel Turner, who had some really good moments last night. But Rasul Faison is going to be the bell cow now. He's a really good running back. He had 800 yards rushing last season, and he's going to be heavily, heavily relied on going forward. But, yeah, my heart just breaks for Briggs. He's got another year of eligibility, and he'll probably have now a medical redshirt year available to him as well. But he just your heart breaks for a guy like that. First game of the year, and just takes a nasty, nasty injury like that.
Man, that bums me out so bad because Briggs and Faison and that two-headed monster was going to be a beast to stop. How did Faison look outside of that?
Faison looked really good, really good. That dude is a load. He's very patient running the football, but he is really good. But I'm telling you, keep an eye on this Herschel Turner kid. He's got a chance to be really special before it's all said and done. He had, now granted, I don't know the level of competition he played at in high school, Hans. So take this with a grain of salt. But he had, as a senior in high school, 3,000 yards rushing. And as a senior in high school, 3,000 yards rushing. He had, I think, 4 or 5 300-yard games.
Kid, isn't he?
Yeah, he had a 17.3 yard average in high school running the football. So this kid put up some crazy stats, and it should be interesting to see what he does. But he'll be relied upon in a big way. Utah State has USC coming up next week in the Coliseum. BYU hits the road to SMU, and I know we spent a lot of time talking about Utah as we start to wrap things up here, but Utah gets Baylor, and I think we're going to see much higher competition for all these teams, although Baylor may not be what they have been in the past. But
I don't think they are. I mean, they beat Tarleton State 45-3. And in that game, I mean, their quarterback, DeQuan Finn, he was like 14 of 22, 192 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. 2 interceptions against Tarleton State. I can't imagine that's a good sign necessarily for him. But the competition will definitely be a lot better for going up against the Utes.
Well, Dave Aranda defensively, look, his resume is well documented, and that'll be interesting, Lloyd, to see what he does defensively against Utah for sure.
Well, and you saw that last year. I mean, when they took them on, it was second game of the season, and that defense swarmed Bryson Barnes, and he wasn't able to get anything done. I mean, that was when you saw they had to switch to Nate Johnson to try to get anything going, and so. And it was that defense that really got it going for Baylor and made it a game and made the Utes sweat through an entire game. So Dave Aranda will have that defense flying around.
DeQuan Finn is that transfer from Toledo. We talked about that at Big 12 Media Days. Remember, guys?
Yep.
And he had multiple 2,000-yard games seasons with Toledo. I think he had 3 of them, if I remember right, when we were talking about it. And he had like 60-some-odd touchdowns with Toledo. He's kind of a freak. And I know Baylor went all out for this guy, hoping that he could be the savior of the program. But as you mentioned, Lloyd, he had a couple of interceptions. I know that he had a fumble in the game. He had multiple mistakes, but he'll settle in. I think he'll calm down. And Scotty's mentioned this multiple times. Aranda's coaching for his life, and they're backed into a corner. They're going to be a vicious animal. And Utah had better be on the top of their game because Baylor could sneak one out on you if you're not watching close. This should be a Utah 34-point victory, in my opinion. Utah needs to stomp them out and work their way into the top 10 rankings in the country. They need to be the bell cow of the Big 12 and really start to push into that top 10 as the highest-rated Big 12 team. And that's where it starts, is making sure that you keep Baylor under your foot and you don't let Chip and JoJo. You don't let Chip and JoJo get one up on you.
That is your go-to.
I just
when they're playing.
Oh
Baylor.
well, it's the problem is that Magnolia Lanes or whatever, like they've sponsored the team now. I think it's Magnolia Lane Stadium.
Chip and JoJo Stadium.
I love it.
Yeah, but you will see. You always
stadium.
see a lot of. You always see improvement going into week 2, and you remember last year Baylor. I think they lost to what was it, Texas State, or it was some terrible team that they lost to, and you're thinking Utah was going to just roll, and they didn't. They came out fired up. In fact, so I got to imagine you'll see Daquan Finn be a lot better and a lot cleaner in game 2.
Yeah. And hopefully you'll see Utah be a little bit cleaner too. But
did you have any? Was there any injury? You didn't mention any injuries for BYU. I know. So we talked about Briggs with Utah State. That's a big blow for Utah State. And you had for the Utes, you had Kenan Johnson and Aliki Vimahi. Yeah, you had those two. Did BYU come out? Did they come out clean?
It looked like they were pretty clean. Keanu Hill was hobbling a little bit, but I think he's going to be okay. There might have been one other injury, but there was nothing that stopped the game, and somebody was helped off the field, and it was a critical position. No, Lloyd, to your point, I think it was pretty clean for BYU, and that's a really good thing. And then just on that, I know he's not a player, but I am expecting Jay Hill to be back in action. Kalani was cracking me up. I guess Jay was texting them like, guys, I need the percentages on this. He'd put together like a coach text string. And Kalani's like, hey,
did
Jay,
he show up to the game?
Jay. Yeah, he was there.
He is a madman.
He came down on the field. He came down on the field with Sarah. He's a madman. It was 100% blockage. It was like 60% the other.
Dude,
this guy is a walking miracle. Yeah. He's a walking miracle, and he's like, I'm going to be down there on the field.
Well, I will
watch it from the Bark Lounger, dude.
Yeah, no doubt. Between him and Sarah, I mean that is the power couple right there. Jeez. With what both of those have gone through and have come out on the other side, and it's just truly amazing.
I love those two.
Yeah,
I got to hang out with them for just a minute at that 100 season anniversary for BYU football at that banquet, Scotty, and got to talk to Sarah, and she's Nampa strong. She's an Idaho girl.
Oh yeah.
And she's just got this infectious smile and laugh, and her and Jay are so classic together because they're just kind of the same laid back, ribbing type personalities. And Jay threw some comment at me across the buffet line, and I threw some comment back at him, and he had a big smile. And you know how he throws his head back when he laughs? You have these weird images of people when they go through trauma like this, and you're like, geez, this world would suck without them.
Yeah.
It would just suck. It would be so hard for this BYU team and for all of us lovers of football here in the state of Utah that know Jay Hill. It would be so hard not to have him.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that he's back out there really quick. So as far as personnel, getting Jay back on the sidelines will be big, and letting Kalani just get back to be a head coach.
Well, gentlemen, episode 1 under our belts. It's your Morning After podcast. Please download it. Please tell a friend. Please rate and review, as long as it's a 5-star rating and you leave a nice review, because we're sensitive about that stuff. So we'd love
our
for
bosses are sensitive about it too.
Yes. So if you've got negative things to say, keep that to yourself. If you want to give us a nice rating, then yes, please tell everybody. We would appreciate that. And rate and subscribe as well to the Hans and Scotty feed. We'll have complete coverage coming up on Monday. Yes, sir.
Now, tell us the story. We're at the back end of the podcast.
Hold on. He's got to let him clean it. He's got to close it. He's got to take catch on this on air.
No. I want him to tell the story on the podcast. Yeah, I want it on the podcast. For the people that stayed and listened to all this stinkfest, they should have a payoff here. What happened in the booth?
It wasn't one of my finer moments.
Oh no,
Christian,
did you have a meltdown?
it was a little bit of a meltdown. I don't know. Christian was producing, and he's producing our Morning After podcast. I don't know if he heard it in the background or not, because, we were connected. We weren't even on it was before the broadcast, and I'm like, wow, I already had a meltdown, and it's before we started pregame for the first game of the year, and I've already melted down.
Scotty texted me. I was on my way in, and I get this message from Scotty saying, pregame hasn't started. I've already had my first blow up. Gonna be a long year.
How bad did it get, Scotty?
Well, all right. I don't know.
And why
man.
the blow up?
Well, so I get really upset because Ajay, and because Ajay's like one of the most kind, giving, generous people on
he's
the
the
planet.
best.
He really is,
Yeah,
and he
the best.
works his tail off, and he just wants to please everybody, and it's such a good trait. And I don't like to please other people. Like I'm not a good person, and so he goes out and he buys all of these just crazy cookies and snacks and chips and jerky and all of this stuff, and it's in our booth. And this has been going on for, 5, 6, 7 years. So now everybody treats our radio booth like their own personal buffet. And so we have all these rando people.
It's like the little gas station that we have at our work, and they just come in and grab things.
Yeah, and so we get like people that will just people that I don't.
That's fine though. That's fun.
No, it's not fun, Hans. I'm trying to do a broadcast, and I don't want some engineer that that I've never seen before walking into our booth and like, hey guys, don't mind if I do, and I'm like, oh my gosh, can
Frank Dolce. Did Frank come by?
Well, here's
of course.
So I did it specifically for Fox and Alema and Dolce because those guys just freaking raid the heck out of it. And so I told Ajay, I'm like, you get to choose. It's either the snacks or we keep the door locked at all times. And we only let in who we need to let in. And he's like, okay, boss. All right. I'm still going to bring in the snacks, but I'll keep the door locked.
Okay, boss.
And well, all of a sudden, I'm getting ready for pregame, and the doors are all locked, or at least they're supposed to be locked. Nobody's supposed to be in the booth. And all of a sudden, I hear this loud, obnoxious voice behind me, and I turn around, and sure enough, here's Dave Fox in my booth, rummaging through all the food, like, hey, guys, what's up? And I'm like, oh, crap. And I look at Ajay, and Ajay's got this little smile on his face, and he's like, hey, it's Dave. Like, what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, don't let him in. And I'm yelling at him in front of Dave, being like, Ajay, he's the guy that I did not want in this booth. He's the guy I didn't want in here. And of course Dave loves it. He's laughing because he thinks he got one over on us. And so he's like stealing all of the food and moving on. And I just lost it. And Ajay thinks I'm joking at this point. And so there's this video or this meme or something of that's floating around, Instagram or Twitter or whatever, where this old guy's yelling at somebody, and this guy goes, "Daddy, chill." Have you seen this at all?
Yeah, I have. It's obnoxious.
And Ajay looks at me and goes, "Daddy, chill." And I'm like, and that's when I lost it. And I will not go into what I said after that. No, Dave wasn't there for that. And then that's when I blew up. And when he said, "Daddy, chill,"
Daddy, chill.
I went.
Did you say things you couldn't repair?
I might have, yeah. I don't know. We may not come back from that. There were a few fire trucks that were said. There were a few, like, it was not. No. It was not good. And,
did Bishop White hear all this?
Bishop White was not amused either. I've been called to repentance by the bishop, too.
Was not amused
State
by
president.
you, or was not amused by Ajay?
No,
White?
he was not amused by the language that I used.
Stake President White was not happy?
No, he was not happy. And I may have overreacted a little bit, and it was not pleasant.
I'm so uncomfortable right now.
But I will say this: there was another. So Learfield brings up some sponsors, and to sit in the booth for a little bit, and they had the guy that brought him up left the door open, and sure enough, at halftime, Fox and Alema tried to sneak in to get the food, and Ajay immediately jumped up and slammed the door in front of Frank and Alema because he was so nervous about what was going on. So Frank tried to get his way into the booth, and Alema was right behind him, and Ajay popped up with the speed that I've never thought was possible from him, jumped up and goes, "Nope, sorry guys," and slams the door shut.
Oh, good for him.
And I'm like, yes, and I'm fist pounding.
That's
I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I wanted to see right there.
All over Ajay trying to be a kind person to everybody in the booth, keeping Fox and our boys happy, and you're just having none of it. No eating in the Scotty G booth. Can he not set the food up out in the open if his intention is to share it?
There's really not a lot of room out there to do it, but I don't know, man. And it just annoys me. Like, why do we have all this food in here? We don't need any food in our booth. And maybe it's because I'm not eating that stuff anymore. I don't know. But it's just like I get so mad when I see these rando people showing up in the middle of a broadcast. Dude, I go total like, imagine
these schlubs that are coming in for the free food. Yeah, I gotcha.
Like
don't you dare call Dave a schlub.
Oh no, Dave's a schlub. Alema's not, and Fox and Frank's not. But Fox, come on, he's a schlub. Let's be honest here. Yeah, they had on that interception, they had a really good video clip of that, and I worked in the broadcast. I'm like, see, if you're not stealing people's food and you actually focus on your job, you can actually get a good broadcast from them every now and then. And that got back to.
Did you? I saw the replay. The replay on that interception. The replay was when they showed the replay. It was like they zoomed in on the guy's feet. Like you didn't even get to see the catch.
Oh, really? Oh,
the camera guy. Yes.
Oh, never
mind.
Like
the play was fine, but the when they did the replay, it was like it zoomed in on the guy's shoes, and then all of a sudden it zoomed out, but he had already caught it.
Oh, that's funny. All right, so anyway, there's the story. I feel bad. I shouldn't have told it. Now it's going to get out. Now it's going to get back to Ajay.
Nobody listens.
Ajay, I'm sorry. Yeah. It's a public apology. Ajay, I shouldn't have blown up. I shouldn't have used the words that I used. I will be better. And I told
Ajay, Scotty always, he talks nothing. He gives nothing but glowing reviews all the time. He loves you, Ajay.
I do love you. I appreciate everything you do. I'm sorry. I apologize to him too. I told him afterwards I was sorry for the blow up. And I think we're in a good place. I think we're going to be okay.
Hey, just to have a little bit of fun to kind of close this up. Because if people listened through all the gobbledygook of game recaps and then they listened through that story that probably Scotty, Lloyd, and I are the only ones that are truly entertained by, but it is highly entertaining. If you've listened through this whole thing, if you follow us at 975 Hants, at Scotty G Zone, and at Lloyd Cole Zone on Twitter, we'll follow you back.
We'll follow you back. It's a follow back Sunday.
It's a follow back. It's a follow back morning after podcast Sunday, and we will follow you back. And if you have any particular question based off of this morning after, we'll have a fun little interaction with you. If you've stayed through all of this, we'll put together something fun, and you can send us a message and be like, oh, Ajay this, or what's Greg Rubel like, and we'll have some fun back and forth with you on messaging. But that's what you get for being one of our 5 morning after listeners.
And tweet at us something that we know that, don't just follow, but send us a tweet that let us know that you actually listened and that so we actually know. Because we get all kinds of spam bots and stuff that follow, and I'm not going to follow back. So send us a message that just say, hey, I heard it. You were in the wrong. Be better. Be a nicer person. And I'll respond back to you.
And then go give us that rating and that comment, because that's why we do this. Honestly, we don't get paid for this. This is Sunday morning. Sorry about our raspy voice. Scotty and I, it was a 12-hour day yesterday. We started the broadcast.
Yeah, you guys are
before we got
grinding,
off air
man.
at about 12.
Lloyd's grinding too, man. Making sure that we stay on the air and all that stuff back there.
Oh my gosh, we did have some fires last night. Luckily, all your guys' stuff was good, but we had other fires. But it was fun.
All right, week 1 under our belts. It's the Morning After podcast. We do it every Sunday morning. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with you tomorrow, Monday at high noon, breaking down everything. You'll hear from Kalani Sitake. You'll hear from Kyle Whittingham. You'll hear from Nate Dreiling, who will be on Mondays now. Moved up from Tuesdays. He'll be on Mondays with us right out of the gate, out of the show to begin things. So you'll hear from Nate Dreiling. You'll hear from all the head coaches coming up on tomorrow's show. Hans, Scotty, and Lloyd, it's your Morning After podcast right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This has been your Morning After podcast with Hans, Scotty, and Lloyd Cole. Catch more of the Hans and Scotty Show weekdays from noon to 3 and in podcast form by searching Hans and Scotty on your podcasting platform of choice. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.